Welcome again to another episode of the Bridging Divides podcast. Super excited, as we always are. You probably hear me say that 50,000 times already, but I'm excited to bring you our guest today, Karen Brown. Yes, she is a Karen, but not that kind of Karen. She's the good kind of Karen.
I get that a lot.
Yeah, I bet you do. You're like, oh my gosh, like, why is he telling that joke again?
No, it's great. I love it.
Glad to prove him wrong. Karen Brown, we've known each other for a year or two, I probably think.
Yep, about a year.
It's kind of when we first met, right? B&I, yet again. You guys have heard me talk about that all the time. Super excited to bring you somebody later on. Kristen Gear. I talked to Kristen Gear, and she said she wants to be on the podcast.
Cool.
So stay tuned. She's super awesome. Mm-hmm. She's one of the regional directors of B&I Arizona. So that'll be a fun one. But networking, I love it because I don't know if I would ever have met somebody that does what you do. Yeah. So Karen owns a company called Ivy League Arizona, which is one of the most clever names I've ever heard. She does mobile IV, do you call it therapy or sessions?
Yeah. So, yes, so it is a mobile IV therapy business. We have a team of nurses. They go to people's homes, provide IV therapy just like you would get in the emergency room, a bag of fluids. We a little bit different. We add vitamins to the bag, so a lot of people feel the effects pretty quickly.
So that's fascinating. So how have you, like, how did you start doing that? Like, just on your own, and then you started getting other nurses to do it, like, for you, or like, how did that work out?
Yeah, so actually I started because I got really involved in healing my own self with vitamins, and became a passion for me, and I wanted to do something to help other people in that way. So I'm not a nurse, but I've gotten IVs in the past, and I thought this would be a really cool thing to be a part of.
Interesting.
So I have a really close friend of mine who's a nurse practitioner. I said, hey, will you be my medical director?
That is so cool.
And she's like, what? So she agreed, and then we hired a team of nurses. They do all the IVs, and she oversees them. It's a whole medical team that does it.
That is so brilliant, because that in and of itself is I think is such a cool thing that it's like a roadblock that you overcame. You're like, well, I'm not a nurse, so I can't do this. But you're like, well, let me go find a nurse that can do it for me. So you had mentioned that you had used it in your own healing. Can you go into detail on that? Like, how,
Sure.
Like, how did that work?
Yeah. Well, so just a little backstory. When my kids were a lot smaller, they're 8 and 9 now, and they were about 4 and 5 at the time. I was diagnosed with a neurological condition, and I was unable to walk for 2 years. And
completely.
Yeah, I mean, I could like walk, but it was like really short distances. I couldn't walk enough to go in public. I couldn't walk across my house. I was in a motorized scooter, like when we go anywhere. And so doctors were handing me all these diagnoses. It was like 4 of them that they said, you're sick with this and this and this, and this is just who you are now. And I was in my early 30s, and I was like, this is no way to live,
Screw that.
Yeah, and so that went on for 2 years, and finally one day I decided I'm going to just look at all the labs that had ever been drawn on me in that 2-year time. They took my blood 26 times in 2 years.
Wow.
And so I was looking at all my levels and realized they had been testing my vitamins that whole time and never telling me they were low. And I found out I was low in all these different vitamins, and I went to my doctor, and I was like, can you please help me raise these levels? And like, I even found scientific studies to show that the conditions I had were linked to vitamin deficiencies. Wow. So even the doctor was like, you're right. Like, there's these PubMed, like, scientific studies that say these vitamins, when you're low in them, you can have these things. It was POTS and fibromyalgia and Sjogren's. I mean, it was just this handful of things. And so he helped me raise my levels, and I got better, and I don't have any symptoms anymore. Wow. But in the middle of all that, I was COVID hit, and then, it was like right at the end of it. But COVID hit, and so I started getting the IVs because I was still working on replenishing my levels. And then it just seemed like it was the thing that pushed me back over the hump that I needed to be pushed over. So that's how I got here, I guess. It was just amazing. Organically, it just happened that way.
That is incredible though, because how many people out there, comment below if this is something that one of those things that you struggle with, that is that how many of us go through those things?
Yeah.
And we have no idea. It's just, you see those infomercials. It's like, if you go through all this, and they show these people that go through it and then get this medication, and
Yeah.
there's 50,000 medications that you take, and here you are, just, it was a vitamin deficiency, or vitamin deficiencies. I guess there were multiple ones. But how did you, that had to have been extremely difficult, like while you were going through that. Because how long was that period of time that you?
It was 2 years until
Wow.
I figured out what was happening, and then it was another probably year and a half of recovery
Right.
after that before I really started to feel normal.
Because it's not a one and done thing.
No.
Like you can't just get one treatment, or take vitamins for a day or a week or whatever and be good to go. Like you have to slowly, I guess, rebuild all of the stuff.
Yeah.
Because we've had a few health coaches on here. Dr. Karker was one. Karker, that's my doctor. Oh my gosh. Karthik Ramanan. His first name's Karthik.
Oh, I know.
Do you know
him.
Dr. Ramanan?
Yes, he's a good guy.
Oh my
really
gosh.
good guy.
Yeah. Hopefully he
Yeah.
doesn't see that I got his name wrong. But he talks about the science of giving your body what it needs. I mean, what your brain needs. He had talked about mental health specifically, and how all of these issues that we're going through, it's like 90-something%. It was like crazy high. It comes from your gut health. Like, what are you ingesting to give your body what it needs, you know? And this is just another testament to that.
Yeah.
That, like, that's crazy.
Well, and I'd also found that my mind had a part in it. It was like,
Interesting.
once I started to realize, hey, my vitamin levels are low, let's fix that. And then I realized I had been kind of in some self-pity, like when you're in bed for 2 years and you've got kids and you're not able to live a normal life, it's really easy to start going, I don't have this and I don't have that,
Interesting.
And I just woke up one day and I was still having symptoms, but it was like slowly getting better. And I just heard this voice say, Karen, do you really want to live the rest of your life this way? And it wasn't like you want to be sick forever. It was like, do you really want to internally keep living like this? And so once I realized, like, I could be sick the rest of my life and not be miserable. It's possible, because there's people that are sick and they're fine mentally, like they handle it well. And so it was like this switch that was flipped for me. And I realized, like, I get to decide how I respond to this.
Wow.
And after that, I was like, I'm going to do the opposite of everything I've done. That sounds so crazy, but it was the thing I needed. And I thought, okay, instead of sitting in self-pity, every time I'm tempted to be upset about this, I'm going to be grateful for something going right in my life.
Yeah.
Whether it's I can breathe today, or I can see, like these simple things that we take for granted. And then instead of sitting, like I was tempted to sit, and I had a cardiologist one time say, Karen, you need to exercise. And I was like, you're crazy. I can't even walk. Like, you want me to do what? She said, start with 5 minutes and work up. And I thought, instead of sitting, I'm going to move. And so I would move every day and just something.
Yeah.
And instead of crying, I'm going to smile. Or instead of like sitting and thinking about me, I'm going to reach out to somebody and ask them how they're doing. And slowly, like, between the healing of the, vitamin deficiencies and then the internal healing that had to happen, it changed my life. Like, I felt like I was reborn, which I think comes from suffering. We all go through it in some way, and we get to decide how we're going to respond to that. And it feels like it was mercy for me, because I was stuck. I was really stuck in the weeds, and I was able to get out of that. And it wasn't just my own strength. I really feel like it came from somewhere else. But yeah.
That's amazing. Oh, my word. So, positivity prize fighter moment right there. I know we're doing this a little out of order. One of my favorite segments that we do in here, we call it the positivity prize fighter moment, where that is such an amazing experience. Because for me, positivity is a huge thing, right? And yet, at the same time, I suffer from depression, and I have experienced some of those similar things, which I'm sure you guys have as well, where we get stuck in that moment, right? But positivity to me is not being able to just smile all the time, because sometimes life hurts, right?
Yeah.
It punches you, knocks you on the mat. But in my mind, positivity is being willing to get back up and keep fighting,
Yes.
you know, and you just laid it out perfectly with so many different of those realizations that you had, where I'm listening to this, I'm like, man, like you could have like this big old seminar, you know, where seriously, like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, have you ever thought of doing a YouTube video, or do you do videos on all of this kind of stuff? Because I'm sitting here and I'm just like, I'm amazed, you know, by all the insight that you have. It's incredible.
I've thought about it. Actually, it's funny you're saying that, because I've thought about like doing some sort of YouTube channel, but we haven't done anything like that at
Oh,
this
please
point.
do.
So,
If you guys would like to see that,
yeah.
please let us know in the comments.
Yeah,
If
that'd
you
be
want to
cool.
see more of Karen and her amazingness, then please let us know. But yeah, I think that that's so incredible though. The cognitive piece is, I mean, that's something that I have to deal with as well, because it's interesting going to the doctor. I think a lot of times when we are going through something, we get a diagnosis. It can do one of a few things, right? Like it can either give us an opportunity to have an excuse, and I don't in any way mean to be insensitive to anybody, right, that's going through something difficult. But for me personally, I found that it could have either given me an excuse to say, okay, well, this is why I am the way that I am, or it could give me something to go, okay, now I understand a little bit more of what's going on, and it gives me a jumping off point.
Yes.
Just, okay, what do I need to do to get better? And it sounds like it's something similar to kind of some of the realizations that you had.
Yes. Yes. And just recognizing like it really is a matter of my response, because somebody else can hear, hey, you have these sicknesses, and go, oh, okay. And then I can go, oh, my whole life is over. And so it's not, it's like, it really is a matter of what emotion you attach to the thing. And for me, I had attached a lot of negative emotions to all this stuff and had made it a badge for myself of like, now I can sit in this. This is my excuse. But after a while, that gets really, really tiring and boring. You know, like there's not a whole lot, you can't really go anywhere from there.
Yeah.
And so to really like move forward, you have to decide, like, what am I going to do with this? Am I going to keep letting it be the barrier that holds me back, or is it going to be the thing that pushes me forward? Even if I'm unable to walk the rest of my life, what's my mind going to do with this thing? And so it really freed me from like, I don't have to suffer, mentally at least. I don't have to. I mean, but I will say, like with depression and stuff, I've struggled with that in the past, and I know that feeling of like it swallows you, you know. And so it's all about what you said. You know, we can still feel, like it's okay to still feel the emotions and let them be there.
Yeah.
And then once you've felt them, then what are you going to do with that?
Yeah.
And so just recognizing that, because for a long time I was like, I can't feel any of that anymore. You know, like I just like wanted to cut myself off from any like bad emotions, and realize that's not healthy either.
Oh, 100%.
So I think there's just like a recognition of, this is how I feel. It's okay.
Yeah.
And what do I do next?
Yeah, 100%. That actually reminds me of a previous episode with Elissa Jones that we just had. She's a health and wellness coach. She's in my BNI chapter, and she's just this amazing, radiant kind of a person, right? Just so bright all the time. But one of the things that she had said that she kind of tells her clients is remember the acronym ALL, A-L-L, where you allow yourself to feel what you're feeling, lean into it, really kind of pick it apart and kind of investigate, why am I feeling this way? You know, kind of do that, and then let it go. You know, and I think that's important, where you give yourself that space to allow, like where you allow yourself to go through it, and instead of shaming yourself, like, oh my gosh, like stop thinking this way, just go, look, you're feeling this way, figure out why, like don't just like let it stay there, because like you said, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
And boring, you know, after a while, you're just like, do I really want to keep doing this? And then let it go, you know, and excuse me, I think it's just awesome though, that it's interesting how that's where it started. And that's what I've found in so many different interviews that we've done, and just kind of over the course of building Bridging Divides is that I kind of started from I'll be solely entrepreneur related and have, business owners and all this other stuff. But what we found through all of these experiences, was that it starts with that mental side, where there comes a point in that suffering, like you said, where I like how you put it, it can either be a barrier to keep you from moving forward, or it can be what pushes you. And I've definitely seen that, when I joined BNI a couple of years ago, it was as solar guy and then bounce house guy and then photo booth guy, which I still do photo booths because they're fun and we have a good time. But then it was finally like, oh, like I came to this and it was hard to kind of keep going through and just be like, man, why can't I decide on anything? But it's just kind of I feel like a similar, I feel like I can't even compare to what you're going through, but like I feel like that similar, like there was a shift that kind of happened where it's like, okay, well, what am I going to do going forward? And now I get to talk about something different on every single episode. So it's great for me, with my ADD brain, I get to go back and forth between all these different things. But, and I love too, how you took kind of, there was kind of stages is what it seems like. There was like what you were going through and then the hard time that you were in. And then it's like the mental game while you're trying to figure out the physical side. And then, you slowly progressed and got better and better and better. And then you took it another level and said, okay, now how am I going to help the people around me? How did you make that shift? Like, what was it from like, great, I'm good, to now what can I do to help all the other people out there?
Oh, that's a good question. I never thought about that. What happened there? So it kind of started with, I started listening to Tony Robbins.
Dude, oh my gosh. That guy's he's a stud.
Oh, I love him. So
everybody knows Tony Robbins.
Oh yeah, yeah. And if you don't, you should.
Yes. Yes, look him up.
So I started listening to his YouTube videos just like at random. And at the time I was working from home doing a job where I felt like this mindless robot working at a computer all day. Anyway, so it was great because it took my mind off of that. And over time I started to realize like, I want more. I want more out of life. I want to do more. And then I went to his UPW conference in Florida. And that is whenever like, it was like gasoline on me. I was just
about to ask, how was that?
Oh, it was amazing. I've been 3 times.
Have you?
Yes. It's
that's awesome.
Incredible. Every time I go, I get something new out of it. So I went to that and it was like I came home with just this knowing I am doing something. And it was like the IV business had just I'd become aware of it. Like I'd seen other nurses doing it.
Oh, interesting.
Because this was in 21. So COVID was still really big. And my mom had just gotten over COVID. She almost died. She had the Delta virus. And so just watching what she went through. And then I was watching this nurse in the Valley helping people everywhere with COVID with IVs. And I was like, I want to do that. And so I saw what she was doing. She invited people to come and be mentored by her for her business. So I go to Tony Robbins. I come home and I'm like, I'm doing this. This business is happening. And like, I just started envisioning this is what's going to happen and it's going to happen by next year. And like, that was November of 2021. And I was like, by May of 21 or 22, this is happening. By August, we had launched.
Wow.
So it was less than a year later that the business was started. That's and it incredible. Really was just like mentally, I made that shift of I'm ready to change and do something more. And I started reading books. I just was like, it was this insatiable, like I need to learn and grow. And it all started with Tony.
Yeah.
So
thanks, Tony.
Yeah.
No, and that's so interesting. Like, there's a couple things that really stood out to me with what you were saying is the progress over perfection. Like I heard somebody say that, and it was just awesome. Mm-hmm. It's like you find even if it's the smallest thing, 5 minutes, exercise 5 minutes, where you'd be thinking like, exercise? Are you kidding me? Like, there's nothing that I can do, But it's like we have that vision of like running a triathlon or an Ironman or something. It's like, obviously you're not there now,
Right.
but what can you do now
Mm-hmm.
to keep you moving forward? Like that, for one, I was just like, when you were saying that, I was like, oh man, that's a good lesson there. But then also just going back to like your story of the journey that you took, starting a business right in the middle of COVID, like that's crazy. Like that alone, good crazy.
Yeah.
I'm the craziest guy I know. Like that's why I love hearing stories like that, where you wouldn't think that would be something that that you could do. What kind of roadblocks did you run into while you're doing that, especially with this type of a business?
Yeah. So we did. I mean, really, we started a business in the middle of the recession. And to me, that means a lot of good things because we can only go up from here, right? I mean, we started and it
Beautiful.
was very slow.
Yeah.
Like, it was painfully slow. And probably the first 9 months I cried a lot. I was like, what have I done? But I just knew no matter how I have felt through it, I know it's what I'm supposed to be doing. And so that's always been an anchor for me. I pray a lot and I just would always hear this voice, keep going, don't stop. And so just, it's really been strengthened me a lot because, when I know what I'm supposed to be doing and I'm just going after it, none of that should matter.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to be attached to any outcome. And so the first year of business has taught me that. And just, what can you do? Don't focus on what you don't have right now. Don't focus on whether it's going well or not going well. What can you be doing right now that you have control over?
Beautiful.
And so it took a long time for me to be open to that. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's been definitely turbulent. I mean, but not in a bad way. We don't have a ton of overhead. It's mobile.
So you don't have to like rent a space that
Yeah.
you have to pay for every month. It's like, oh crap, well now
Yeah.
we got to make up this much.
We're not losing thousands a month because of slowness,
Yeah.
So there's so many good things that we have to be thankful for in it. But yeah, it's been hard. I'm not going to lie about that. It's been hard.
Hey, they don't
Yeah.
call it work for nothing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta, it's a hustle,
Right.
to figure things out. One of the things that struck me too about what you're saying is that the clarity that you found, and I have found that clarity creates confidence. If we have that clarity, which for me as well, I pray a lot and try to get guidance on, on where I should go to help with that clarity, but once I have that clarity, I feel like, man, I've got this. I can do it. Because I went through something similar with Bridging Divides. It's like, who am I? I'm not Tony Robbins,
Yeah.
but we all go through things. And I think that is also one of the huge things that I love, is that the idea of community, how we can all kind of help each other through what we're going through, sharing, our experiences, which, by the way, thank you for sharing that. I mean, it's a very personal thing that you've been through, but I think that's a good thing to be able to share those experiences, because it lets us all know that you're a real human being, right? Like, you're not just like, I want to make money just to make money. I mean, obviously you have a business. It's important to be profitable, right? To keep it going. But I feel like you're a great example of kind of putting the mission before the money, if you will. I hope that this goes huge and, you're the biggest and you're making millions and everything. Like, I'm all for that, but it's like not at the expense of that kind of core value that you have,
Yeah.
So we talk about a lot of different principles in Bridging Divides, from, having clear goals and taking initiative and being productive, to finding your own unique strengths, making mistakes, overcoming those different mistakes. What unique strengths have you found that have made you uniquely successful with what you're doing?
Oh, that's a really deep question.
Take your time.
So I would say, and I didn't know this about myself before, and BNI has taught me this.
Yeah.
BNI is incredible. I love talking to people. and I'm really good at talking to people. And I would have never said that about myself before, nor would I have like
Awesome.
believed it,
Yeah.
you know? And so just realizing like business is all about relationships. And that's not always about like, what can I get from this person? How can I sell to them? It's more of how can I serve them? Like, what can I do for this person to help them
Yeah.
in their business?
Yeah.
And I think that when you find those people and you link arms with them is when the magic happens, because it's no longer about how do I succeed and become better in business. It's about how do we succeed together and make this work. And like it's just the relationships I've found in BNI and in networking and in that world have been so valuable to me. Like
Beautiful.
if I were to walk away from all of it today, that would be the one thing I would continue is the friendships I've made, and I can't be thankful enough for them. So
No, that's incredible.
Yeah.
And you touched on another huge thing that is a very big soapbox of mine is the relationship side of business. If you're purely transactional, then there's nothing that you won't do to get a sale.
right,
But
and people will see that in
Oh
you.
my gosh,
Yes.
you can smell it from a mile away. And I've been in sales and customer service for 18 years now. I mean, pretty much when I started working, that's what I started doing. I mean,
Yeah.
I was always in that space. And I could see the people that I was a server for a while, and they were only nice to get money.
Right.
Right? Like that was the sole reason. You know, and there's nothing that they wouldn't do or put up with to get that, right? And so there's kind of a dual thing. It's like when you're transactional like that and you're chasing the sale or the money purely, then you're willing to do things that you probably shouldn't do,
Yeah.
and willing to put up with things that you should say no, like this is not right that a human being should be treated this way.
Yeah.
You know. And so I think that's such a beautiful principle, and something that drew me to BNI also is that the building relationships aspect, you know, that they have, and they're like their main core value is givers gain, right? That to me, I feel like says it all, you know. And with the bridge strategy that we talk about a lot here, we call it complete their bridge, right? Instead of looking for people where they can complete your bridge, look for people where you can complete theirs.
Yeah.
You know, how have you seen that principle come back around to you in your business?
So, funny. So, a friend of mine is a nurse practitioner. She runs her own mobile medical practice, and I invited her to BNI, to my group, and she joined about a year ago.
Oh, awesome.
And, you know, in the IV world, regulations change all the time. One of the new rules is we need to have an exam done before each IV now. So I reached out to her and I was like, hey, can I get some business your way? Like, every time I get a new IV client, I can send them to you.
Awesome.
And you do our exam. And then, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
like, we created this cool power partnership is what they call it in BNI.
Yeah.
That is the first thing that immediately comes to my mind is just building her up at the same time. Like, and it's so
Yeah.
empowering because now it's like you feel like you really are linked arms with somebody whenever you get that kind of relationship going,
That's
you know?
incredible.
But otherwise, like we've had people in our group who've gotten very ill. Like one just is recovering from valley fever. He's been out for a couple of months. And just getting to reach out to that person and offer them a meal. And
Yeah.
how can we come over and help you? You know, like building that kind of relationship where I get absolutely nothing out of it and I don't want anything. It's just,
Yeah.
how do I help this person that I care about now? You know? So in a relational way, that's something that comes to mind.
No, and that's saying it perfectly. I think that when we aren't looking for something when we're serving someone else, I feel like that's truly when we get the most back from it. Like, not to mention the fulfillment that we feel, but all of a sudden, that's the funniest thing. The most selfish thing that you can do is to be selfless,
Yeah.
right? If things aren't coming your way, then forget yourself for a bit and start thinking of other people.
Yeah.
And then you'll find that it comes back to you tenfold, hundredfold. You know, Yeah. Oh my goodness. I've seen that as well in BNI. And so that's why I love that question, and seeing how other people have seen that come back their way as well. One of the things that drives me nuts, one of the excuses that people use for not being successful, which I've been victim of using this as well, is saying, well, I can't do that because it's all about who you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know anybody. Like, what do you say to that? Say I was one of your friends. I was like, oh, well, that's cool that you have this business and everything, but that's just because you know the right people and I don't know anybody. What do you say to that?
My first response would usually be, well, I didn't either. I mean, we started the business and I didn't know. It was like 2 days before we opened, and I said, how are we going to tell people we're open? Like, it just dawned on me.
It's like,
we're
oh,
mobile.
crap. Wait a second.
We don't have a storefront. Like, how are we going to, you don't just turn an open sign on.
Yeah.
Like,
Just drive around.
Yeah.
Keep driving.
Like, just drive around and yell out of a megaphone. I don't even know.
Hey,
So-
that's one way to do it.
And it's really not probably the right way.
Probably not, no.
No. And I just knew, it was like this knowing, go to BNI. And I'd grown up with my mom in business, and she did BNI. So I was
Okay, so you were familiar with
I was familiar with
concept.
what it was, but I didn't know what I was doing, how to find the right one. None of that. I just went to one, and it just happened to be a good one. And I was
Yeah.
like, well, good thing, because,
Cool.
you're in now. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's really important. Those numbers, all that stuff.
Uh-huh.
And so I just realized that I had to get to know people. And it took me a couple of months to realize that. I was just desperate. Like, how do I make this work? And then, I got to meet people and like do these one-to-one things. Like, what's that, and spending a lot of time building those relationships. And now I'm like, I know all these people, all of them, but just realizing you got to get in front of as many people as you can and meet them and add quality and value to their life, and do that consistently. And over time, your net gets bigger.
Yeah.
And so I've had people say that to me before. It's who you know. And to me, it's like, well, yes, it is. It is who you know, but that's up to you. Who are you going to get to know? Like, you get to decide who you meet. And I can't fix that for you.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's perfect. It's if you don't know anybody, then go and get to know them.
Yeah.
Don't use it as an excuse to not take action. There's a lot of things that we can use to keep ourselves in rut, right? What have been, kind of as we land the plane here, and this is, I think, a great thing to kind of wrap all this up on. What have been kind of some of the biggest kind of mental hurdles that you have overcome that can be great advice for us and all of you guys out there to keep going, to be successful?
So I would say just in the short amount of time I've been doing this, one of the bigger things I've learned is that I can't make decisions when I'm afraid. So with business, it's really easy to get fearful about the seasons, the month. It's a slow month. It's a slow week. It's too much work, like all of the things that can go wrong, because on any given day, things can not go the way I want. But when I'm afraid, I make really bad decisions.
Interesting.
And whether that means I react to somebody in a not a good way and I need to apologize later, or I buy something because it seems like the flashy thing to do to fix my problem,
Yeah.
I have to stop when I'm afraid, and I have to step back and let the feeling pass. And then I get to make a decision.
Wow.
And so that would probably be my biggest takeaway. And what I've learned the most is when my emotions are high is not the time to act. It's
Take
the
a
time
beat.
to take a breath and just say, you know what, when this is past, I'm going to be thinking clearly, and then I can do something about it. And that has served me really well, but it didn't happen overnight. It was a lot of, have you ever heard of the book Failing Forward?
I think I have. I've heard the phrase.
Okay.
But I don't think I've read the book yet.
Yeah, so that's a John Maxwell book. It's a really, really good book.
Yes, I know John Maxwell, the 15 Laws of Successful, whatever. He's got like several different ones of those.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I bought it like a few months ago. So
nice.
I need to.
There you go.
I need to read it now.
It's a sign.
Yeah.
No, but so that book was really pivotal for me. It taught me that my failures and the wrong moves are the things that steer us where we're supposed to go. And so when you make mistakes, you learn from them, and it's not the end all. And so just I've lived in fear long enough that I'm like, I know what this feels like. I don't like it anymore.
Mm.
And my business doesn't need to be run on my emotions. So that's really the biggest thing that I would say.
And I think that that's incredible too, because I think that so often people think of business and think, oh, well, it has to be this emotionless, like, thing that there's no kind of morals involved. But that's not what you're talking about.
No.
Because we just talked about how the way to be successful is by connecting with other people on this emotional level, right?
Yeah.
But being able to separate or compartmentalize, almost like you said it better than I'm trying to say it right now. Faith over fear, right? Like don't do things from that fear standpoint. Don't do things when your emotions are high and you're, frazzled and everything. It's like, okay, take a beat, say, okay, what is it, what we actually need to do to move forward, and then do that.
Yes.
Not the, the flight mode that we're in when we feel that fear. It's like, let's use some actual logic. Actually, that brings up an interesting point. We did an episode with Jacob Sparks. Really, really cool episode. And he's a marriage and family counselor and talks to people about mental health and stuff all the time. And he had talked about the brain and how, like, everything that we kind of internalize goes through the emotion center first. Non-scientific terms here. It's like the emotion center first, and then the logic center that's at the front of our brain. And if the emotions are out of whack and we don't know how to self-regulate, he talks about, then we can't see things logically.
That's true.
And so
I believe that.
he's
That's
like,
great.
we need to, I'm doing this right now because that's something that he had done. But it's like, he's like, there's the lid, right? He's like, there's the emotions that are causing this lid to be open, and it's like it needs to close so that you can actually allow the, to flow to that logic center to be able to actually work through things. And so it's like finding those ways to calm ourselves down, to say, okay, well, how am I thinking right now? Am I coming from a place of fear or from faith? I like to call it, because that's faith to me is not just like, saying like, please let this work. It's like,
Right.
I'm going to put in the work. Faith without works is dead, is one of my favorite passages from the Bible. Because it takes work to show that. But I think that's a beautiful illustration of that kind of principle. So, Karen, again, thank you for being on. This has just been seriously so amazing. I feel like I'm walking away with it, with all these like insights, and I know that everybody out there is also gonna just benefit so much from your story. And if you would like to work with Karen, we'll put all of her links and contact information in the description so that you can reach out to her if you need anything IV related. And just remember that just like Karen and the things that she has learned, don't come from a place of fear when you are looking at your life. There's an empowerment that comes from realizing that you don't want to live that way anymore. And if you're feeling that way, trust me, so many of us have felt that, and we know that it's scary and it can be hard to make that first decision. But like Karen, start small. Start with what you can do and build on that. And one day we might be as amazing as she is here. So just remember that. I love you guys. We'll see you on the next one.